Hello, guys, and welcome to CastCast, where I am your host, Cassidy Streeter. Today, we are looking forward to the rest of the games in Week 6, and I think we have a fairly good batch of games here. One quick thing that I'd like to touch on is what in the world is going on in Denver? It is kind of crazy to me that ever since I've ranked them as the last team in my power rankings a couple weeks ago, they've been living up to it. I thought maybe there would be some sort of, you know, reconciliation from them where it's like, oh, we're not just looking to trade everybody. They honestly kind of, what's kind of funny about them to me is that they kind of look like the Bears last year, where they're getting rid of all of these veteran guys, like they're ready to go into full rebuild. And it's crazy because they have obviously a QB in Russell Wilson that they are paying a butt ton of money, and his contract goes through when he is 39 years old. Like, you, goodness, they have that contract for many, many, many more seasons. So what are they going to do? Just cut their losses after this year? I honestly feel like they are headed in that direction, as crazy as that sounds, because Russell Wilson looks terrible. I do not care about how going into Thursday night they were talking about how he had the fourth highest QBR. I've One of my personal opinions on QBs like him is that they put up good yardage, and his touchdown interception ratio wasn't terrible, but now it's even worse with no touchdowns and two more picks added from Thursday night. But good lord, the other thing too is the time management. What in the world was Sean Payton thinking when they were definitely not going to go for it, calling a timeout and then giving the Chiefs essentially 3 more points to add insult to injury before the half? It is absolutely maddening to me, and it's crazy. And the nuts thing about it is that I'm still very like we're cautious about how next week my Packers go to play here in Colorado, the Denver, because it looks like my team's been really inconsistent. The Broncos have been really inconsistent. It looks like it's going to be one of those games where it's like, who the hell knows who's going to win this game after the Packers have come off two straight losses. But enough about the Broncos. And I was saying this before the year, but their schedule is one of the toughest in the NFL the later you get into the season, which is kind of insane, given their predicament, that it's like, oh, what is our plan? Are we really going to go by this week by week? Or are we just going to, unload the house, get rid of Judy, get rid of Frank Clark, get rid of all these guys that it's like, oh, yeah, we don't want these veterans. But yeah, what a shit show by the Chiefs. You can't, I mean, not the Chiefs, the Broncos. Goodness. And it's like, even the Chiefs, they couldn't score. They had one touchdown the whole night. But, had enough field goals to, win by 11 points. But yeah, enough about that. That is my subtle roast to the Broncos, cuz it's like, good lord, how could you guys get worse from last season? But moving on, looking ahead to Sunday's games, we have another London game. The Jaguars aren't in this one, so I don't know how much that's going to play a role in the teams playing. I think that because this is a kind of a neutral site game between the Ravens and the Titans, I personally don't know who to think will win this game. looking at this, I mean, you got the Ravens at 3-2, the Titans 2-3. Looking at the injuries, the only notable injuries I really see here is that Traylon Burks is out with a knee injury. That's huge for against the Titans because he is their, kind of young wide receiver that they're kind of trying to groom and get good. And then you have the Ravens, who are relatively healthy with Adafaway, a 24-year-old young player being out, but I don't think that this is the soul of their defense. I don't think this is going to really affect them that much, And I mean, you also have DB Elijah Molden injured on the Titans. I think that this just gives favor to the Baltimore Ravens, of course. You go look at the Baltimore Ravens and, and their depth chart and that sort of thing. I think that Zay Flowers, is coming into his own somewhat. Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman being healthy is huge. For the most part, you've got a fully operational offense, with Lamar Jackson leading the way. Obviously, a very disappointing loss last week against the division rival Steelers. Lamar Jackson, the man who made a pick on him, kudos to him. That was a potentially game-saving pick, and it's kind of crazy to me how Joey Porter Jr. has talked so much smack, but he's backed it up so well already. But this is a game that I fully expect the Ravens to be able to win. They have a very veteran, defense that, I guess their biggest weakness is really that they don't have that much of a pass rush. Roquan Smith is an incredible middle linebacker. The only player I would argue would maybe be on the same level as Fred Warner, as Roquan Smith. They both play the position exceptionally well, but yeah, looking at their depth chart and then looking at the Titans, I think the Titans, without Traylon Burks, you're kind of expecting a lot from D-Hop, who did have a good game last week. Obviously, you still have Derrick Henry, who kind of got it going last week. Good for him because he is, a really good, he is a really good player and, can change the outcome of a game. But I think that because the Ravens have such a stout run defense, and that's probably one of their strengths, is that I am going to take the Ravens over the Titans here. Well, obviously the Ravens are in the tightest division in football right now, where it's every team is 3-2. Anybody could go and win the division here, even the Bengals, who have been having such a rocky start to the season. But yeah, I'm gonna take Ravens over the Titans by, I think, 6 points. Moving on to, the regular morning games, we have Commanders visiting the Falcons. Looking at this game, the Falcons don't have, the Falcons don't have any injuries, which is, really good going into, I guess, essentially 2/3 of the way into the season. If they can get out of, this week without any injuries, huge for them. The team can only get better, assuming they have all the same guys healthy every week. Looking at the Commanders, they have Christian Holmes out with a hammy. I don't think this is the reason why their defense is the way it is. I think it's because of Sweat and Young. I think that looking at the Falcons, they do a very run-heavy attack, obviously. And I think that Ritter, has been throwing picks and kind of bad picks. And it's even with the Commanders, only being 2-3, I think they match up really well against the Falcons because they have a very, very physical front, where the Falcons, I don't think, are going to be able to, and really athletic, guys on the edge. So, not to say that I don't think Bijan Robinson can't have a game here, but I think it might be more where he's lining up as a wide receiver where he's having an impact over him running it out of the backfield all the time. Because as quick as he is, I mean, the Commanders are a very scrappy team. Even in the loss to the Bears, which was kind of, it was a tough loss. I didn't expect, last Thursday, not this last Thursday, but the Thursday night prior, they looked rough on offense. I do think that Howell is going to have a better time this game around, and he may honestly be the difference between a win and a loss here. I think the Falcons, I want to say that they have the upper hand, but I'm actually going to go with the Commanders as the underdog in this game, and I'm going to go Commanders by a point because I think that the Commanders have they match up well, like I said, very physical D line against, a very good O line. But I think that, the Falcons have been kind of inconsistent to me, even as a 3-2 team, where, there have been games where they haven't ran it well, this season. I think only maybe one or two of the 2 games, but I think the Commanders can win this, and I'm going to favorite them by 1 because, in all honesty, I think the Falcons can win 2. And I mean, on another side note, I think that Ritter needs to not throw turnovers. Otherwise, it's Commanders' favor. And that's the reason why I say this, because I don't think Howell's going to throw picks, but I think Ritter is susceptible to picks. Moving on to our next game, we have Vikings going up against the Bears. It's somewhat shocking to me that these 2 teams are both 1-4. I said it in my power rankings. I think the Bears could have easily been, higher if they hadn't gone against the grain with Fields, and then, last Thursday night they go and they essentially, attack the Commanders in their game. DJ Moore having a great day. Justin Fields having a good day. The defense being able to get to Sam Howell and make him uncomfortable to where it was hard for them to perform on offense. They did have a little bit of a, stutter, I guess, in the second half defensively. But I do think that the Bears actually win this game. I think the Vikings, without Justin Jefferson, I think it's going to really hurt them. And I think, if Jefferson was playing, I would probably say Vikings because I think Jefferson would carve up the inexperienced Bears defense, to be honest with you. And with how much they target Jefferson, that would be the case. But without Jefferson, do the Vikings really have, what is their scheme? What is their scheme? You can't really tell me that they're going to run and pound it with Cam Akers, who they acquired, several weeks ago now. And then, I mean, looking at the Vikings besides them, they obviously have Madison, KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison, and then Brandon Powell. Hawkinson, I feel like, is going to have a lot rougher of a time as well since you don't have Justin Jefferson, and you're already, I don't know, you're already really shallow on, wide receivers on this team. I mean, I think that, I just don't see how the Vikings are going to do this offensively. You lose, arguably, the best wide receiver in the NFL. I still think he is number 2, to be honest, besides Devontae Adams. But Jefferson being hurt, even though the coach said, oh, we have plenty of other playmakers besides Justin Jefferson, it's a lot of unproven besides Hawkinson. But even Hawkinson, it's like even Hawkinson, it's like, now that Jefferson's not in the picture, teams are going to be scheming more to key on him. So who knows how productive he could be. And then with that, I mean, you have Jordan Addison is, I guess, listed here as the number 2. But KJ Osborne is your wide receiver 1. I'm not going to lie. I think he is a reliable threat that finds open space, but he's not a guy that's a wide receiver 1. So it's like looking at the Vikings, like, what are they going to look like? And then you get the Bears off of a hot win after losing however many, and the Bears, Khalil Herbert has his injury, which kind of sucks. Obviously got a lot of running back injuries here. Equanimous St. Brown is out. Questionable is Eddie Jackson and, Lucas Patrick. But with a concussion, hopefully he can go. I don't think it's going to be a huge thing, though, because, I mean, you do have Danielle Hunter, which, I think that Fields is fast enough to, maybe escape and get away from him, which is a saving grace because Danielle Hunter's been having a good year. But this Vikings team, who knows what kind of style of ball they're going to play, because there's even been rumors about them trading, Danielle Hunter, but there's been rumors like that for the last few years surrounding Danielle Hunter, and that type of thing. And it's like, are the Vikings really ready to, like, give up on Kirk Cousins after this year? And then the Kirk Cousins, trade things. I know he's going to go out there and he's going to play to his best ability. But the thing is that, you look at the Bears and, I mean, their defense isn't very, noteworthy yet. They need to kind of prove it over consecutive games. But yeah, I think that the Bears take this game because of the lack of talent, that being Justin Jefferson on the offensive side of the ball for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to say the Bears by 7, and that's my take on that game. Moving on, we have Seahawks Bengals. I personally think that even though it's in Cincinnati, I think the Seahawks, they're coming off of a bye week. The Bengals, I mean, you can't really say yet that this game is like a must win, because we're not even halfway through the season. But if the Bengals lose this and drop to 2-4, it's gonna put a lot more pressure on them every single week to win a game. With the Seahawks and Bengals, I just wonder if the Bengals are going to be able to get the pressure needed to get after Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been methodically distributing the ball, has a great amount of weapons on this team, and because of that, I just think that Seattle holds the upper hand here. Obviously, the thing about the Bengals that everyone knows is it's like great offense, great weapons for Joe Burrow, but if Joe Burrow is not playing up to par, this team just looks like a dead team. I don't care that you have Jamar Chase at wide receiver. I don't care that you have Mixon. I don't care that you have gosh, why can't I remember the other guy's name? Higgins at wide receiver. It just doesn't look like a team that is a winning team to me, but Tyler Boyd is obviously a good wide receiver threat. Like, this is still to me probably one of the best receiving cores in the league, but it's just crazy to me, I guess, how off they look when Joe Burrow isn't performing well or he has no time and all of that. But looking at the Seahawks, you have Artie Burns and Cody Bryant out. These aren't even their 2 starting guys. Obviously, they have Tariq Woolen and they have Witherspoon, who has been balling out. There's already been some trash talk about, I think DK said that, oh, I think Witherspoon is going to have Jamar Chase's number, type of thing. Doubtful is Damian Lewis, the guard. It's kind of a small blow. Looks like he's not going to be a go. But, for the Bengals, questionable. You do have T. Higgins with a rib injury. These are always hard to play with, too. But, Awuzie, being injured or, with a back injury. I know that back injury is just because of, when Jair Alexander came back last week, he looked like he was just older and slower and not the young, spry, corner that we look like. And Awuzie is a good corner. Don't get me wrong. But, I look at this and it's like, even if he's a go, I feel like, he could be a liability on defense. I'm not going to say that it's the exact same kind of back injury or how severe it is and that sort of thing. But, it's just never a good thing when your back is hurt, and essentially you have to play through that the whole game because you got to be upright the whole game pretty much, type of thing. But the Seahawks here, I actually expect to win. They're coming off of a bye. The Bengals, I guess I can't remember who they played last week. I guess let me look here quick. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh yeah, that's right. They played the Cardinals, who played scrappy with them. And the thing about the Cardinals is that it's like, yeah, they won 34-20, but the Seattle Seahawks defense is far better. And I think that they match up pretty well, given that they have, Tariq Woolen, who can probably, definitely keep up with T. Higgins, and especially if he has a rib injury, like Tariq Woolen just being a crazy size and speed, corner. And then you have Witherspoon going on Chase. That's the way they match them up, type of thing. I think that it's with the way that they've been playing, I think that they can make it hard on the Bengals. And the Bengals, I mean, I really just don't think that they measure up well against Seattle. I think that, they do have a pretty stout run defense. That front seven, I think, is the strength of this, Cincinnati Bengals defense, especially after losing Jesse Bates, who just did so much, but, I'm going to have to go Seattle for this game, and I'm going to go Seattle by 10 over the Bengals. Moving on to our next game, we got 49ers at the Browns. The Browns, obviously, they're coming off of a bye. That didn't play last week, and boy, are they going to need it. The Niners coming off, obviously, a fuming win where they just showed that they are the undisputed favorite to win the Super Bowl. I'm not even afraid to say it. They have such a good team, and to just go and treat the Cowboys as if they were like a 2-win or a 1-win team, is kind of crazy to me. Even though I do think that there are glaring weaknesses in the Cowboys, on the Cowboys team. There are some things they do exceptionally well, such as pass rush, but the Niners just don't really have a flaw at this point. The team is, for the most part, really, really healthy. And, you just can't really question what they're doing with McCaffrey, where he's just such an X-factor player leading the offense. And then you have Brock Purdy, who's distributing the ball around and making few mistakes. So you have to be a low margin for error. And the other thing about the Browns is that Watson got this shoulder injury, and I guess he's listed as out here. I really don't see a world where the Cleveland Browns, win this game. Looking at their depth chart here, you got PJ Walker playing, who, last year did kind of have somewhat of a resurgence, after they fired Rule and PJ Walker was playing, but PJ Walker by no means is going to be, this dominant Niners defense. And then it's like you have Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. I don't really see them running very well against this team either. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore are going to have their hands full trying to get open quickly when the pass rush is going to go after a less mobile PJ Walker than obviously Deshaun Watson would be. And you look at this, their O-line is, somewhat banged up, and you've got Njoku who's questionable, but yeah, a very banged up O-line, and obviously Jack Conklin, being on IR, that's huge. I really expect Bosa to be able to just have a heyday here where the Browns just are not going to stand a chance. The only way I see the Browns being able to compete in this game is because of their defense. You look at Myles Garrett, you look at Zadarius Smith, these are two guys that it's like have the mentality of winners. And, no matter how much the odds are stacked against you, if your defense can do opportunistic plays, like get to Purdy, make him rush a little bit, Purdy, gets really good protection, but you're going to have to be opportunistic and hopefully get some sacks on him. Make it really, really hard for the Niners to play their kind of short game where they get their guys the ball quickly and are able to, run it after the catch, type of thing. Because I'm not saying Purdy doesn't have, a decent arm. He can't throw it deep, but the Niners do an excellent job at getting it to various guys, short, with precision passing from Purdy, and then just all this, but you're going to need to be opportunistic as the Browns defense. You're going to need to give your offense, the majority of the time in order to have a chance to win this game, but even with that said, I fully expect the Cleveland Browns to lose this game. And I mean, I'm sure that they've kind of noticed that it's like, I wouldn't say that they're in that much trouble if they lose because they're dropping down to 2-3. But you look at, the Ravens, who look like they're likely to win their game this week, and they're already 3-2. So you're technically a game behind, even though it's just because of a bye. But yeah, the Niners here, they really don't have that many injuries either. Trey Greenlaw, if he doesn't play, is kind of huge, but not a huge blow, I don't think. Their chances of winning. But yeah, looking at this, it's not a favorable situation for the Browns. But moving on to our next game, we have the New Orleans Saints up against the Houston Texans at Energy Stadium in Houston. The Saints coming off of a win last week, and the Texans, of course, coming off a loss, even though I thought for sure that they would compete last week, in their loss. But I really think that the Saints are going to be the first, really tough challenge for the Texans, and for CJ Stroud. Because looking at these games, sure, you have a Baltimore Ravens defense that is good, but isn't going to exactly, light a fire under you to get rid of the ball. The Indianapolis Colts, either. Jacksonville, obviously you guys have had their number type of thing. The Steelers, yes, kind of with Watt. I really don't think that they always get a ton of pressure just because he's their main guy. But then the Falcons, lost last week, some learning for them. And, now going up against the Saints, a very savvy defense, and obviously the Texans with Nico Collins, their, budding wide receiver, who's essentially been like their main guy. And, besides Puka Nakua, I think that Nico Collins has kind of proven that he was undervalued in the draft. Him and Puka have kind of, probably made a lot of teams think, like, why didn't we look at this guy a little bit more? Because he's getting a good amount of yards. He seems to have a really good rapport with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud obviously has now the record of most yards and like most completions without a pick. But this team, fully, they have a pretty good O-line. They have Laramie Tunsil, who's a very good left tackle, Shaq Mason, good right guard, Titus Howard isn't, too shabby. But this is a team that I look at, and this is kind of a challenge game for them, where I think that, looking at it and them going up against the Saints, let's look at the injury report real quick. But yeah, you have, a Saints team where, they have their starting QB in Carr back. He's obviously not listed here under the injury report anymore, so he's going to be playing and he's fully healthy, which is huge for them. But yeah, this is a team that, because Michael Thomas is staying healthy, which, is, I've always kind of discredited Michael Thomas because I think that he's, always been injured, and he only had one really, really good, like all-pro worthy season. But it's like, the fact that they've kept all these weapons healthy, and Rashid Shaheed is definitely like, he's a crazy burner threat, and then you have Olave, who just, great target, great vertical, good hands, really competes for the ball. And then you bring Alvin Kamara back. They just have a very, very good offense. And I think that the one thing that I will say about their offense, that is a little bit lacking is their line situation. I do think Cesar Ruiz and Ryan Ramczyk is the strength of their O-line. But, at least even when my Packers were playing them, they were able to get to Carr, not super regularly, but they amped it up in the second half to be able to win that game. And obviously, their defense is kind of without mentioning, Isaac Yiadom, I think, is, doing really well, even as a third corner. Paulson Adebo, and then, of course, Marshawn Lattimore, Alontae Taylor. They all seem to be very scrappy. And that seems to be the identity of this defense, is that they have a very scrappy secondary. Tyrann Mathieu, scrappy, Marcus May. But it overall, this defense, and especially even with Demario Davis, it's going to be a tough task for the Texans. That is why I'm going to say that I think in this game, I think that, Saints Texans, even though it's in Texas, which, is relatively close to Louisiana, I would imagine that the Saints, might travel well because they have a very, very loyal fan base. I'm going to say the Saints by 9 points for this game. Moving on, we have a divisional matchup here with the Colts visiting the Jaguars. The Jaguars returning from having 2 games in London. Obviously, this is a very huge game. Both teams at 3-2. I think the Colts have, I wouldn't say over-delivered, but the fact that Richardson has been, pretty banged up, I guess, a lot this year, and then you have Gardner Minshew coming in, I think Minshew is trying to make a case that he could have a starting job elsewhere, on this team. And, looking at the Colts, you have Braden Smith out, unfortunately, and Ryan Kelly with an ankle and foot injury, questionable, which kind of sucks. But for the Jaguars, Zay Jones is out, and then Devon Hamilton is out as well. Devin Lloyd, questionable. These are two pretty healthy teams. I think that, looking at these two, we have, Minshew starting. Jonathan Taylor, obviously, I think that he had limited snaps, because he may not be in the best of game shape. I don't know what it was like for him sitting out, how serious he took it or how much he wanted to, but missing training camp type of thing. I mean, you probably, you may not be up to game speed right away, but Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., and Alec Pierce, who I think is, pretty underrated, I guess. Looking at these guys, I think that Michael Pittman, is a good talent. I think that Alec Pierce, like I said, is a little underrated. And I do think that the Indianapolis Colts always do well with their tight ends, even though it's not a flashy names. I think Ogletree, is good, and their line for the most part is pretty good, but the loss of Braden Smith, for this game, and then you have, Blake Freeland. I think that it's not going to be too tough of a task for them, to beat the Texans. I think the Texans the Jaguars. I'm sorry. Holy crap. I just totally lost my train of thought. We were just talking about the Texans. For them to beat the Jaguars. The Jaguars, to me, whenever they've went up against the Colts, have had their number. But I think that that's, due to change. I think that the Jacksonville, for the most part, to me, has shown that they're way too inconsistent, I guess. And, I do like their wide receivers. Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley are really good. But besides that, who do they have? Obviously, Zay Jones is out. He's their third. And then you have, Jamal Agnew, who's going to obviously have to step up. Or Tim Jones, whom I'm not going to lie, I don't know who that is. I think that the Colts can finally go and make a statement win against the Jaguars, because I think that they're tired of being in their shadow. Bold statement here. And I think that they're tired of getting beat by them, type of thing. I guess let me look here at the last meeting. The last meeting was, this year, and they beat them by 10. Kind of is to be expected, because that was early in the season. And I think that Jacksonville is just, they have the better quarterback, obviously. And at that point, Richardson was starting, and not that he looks bad, but he looks inconsistent, and he looks kind of ballsy for a rookie, like a little raw, to be honest with you. But that's just my opinion on that. The Jaguars, there's just something about them that I don't trust, that they are too inconsistent. And they've just come off of, 2 straight wins, but I think that the Colts, they look really good with, Minshew at quarterback. There's just something about him that he plays a type of ball that is, reminiscent of kind of the accurate passer that, they missed, or that, is, it's reminiscent of like Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. Obviously not to that caliber, but it's like he looks cool, calm, and collected, and he's making smart throws. And the Jaguars, they have won their last two, but before then, it's like, there's games that it looked like, oh, they should win this game, and it just looked rough, and it's, their offense seems to stutter really, really, really hard, when they're inconsistent like that. But even with that said, even with me saying the Colts, I think it's time for, an upset or something like that. I think that the Colts only win this game by 3 points. Moving on, we have Panthers visiting the Dolphins. This is one of those games that I'm not going to lie, I don't really want to analyze this. Looking at this, the Panthers, Miles Sanders is out, Von Bell is out, Xavier Woods out. Goodness, a lot of safety. And then questionable is Ian Thomas, Derek Brown, and then even Brian Burns. If Derek Brown and Brian Burns are banged up, this Miami rushing attack can do really, really well. Looking at this, they have, for the injuries for the Dolphins, you have Connor Williams is out, unfortunate. Nick Needham and Jeff Wilson, doubtful. And questionable Alec Ingold, the fullback. Jalen Phillips, and then Robert Jones. With the Dolphins at full strength, having Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and just having been the best offense easily this year, where it's not even a question, I think that, they're just gonna roast this Panthers team who has struggled mightily on defense. I think they've only had a couple games where they've looked somewhat stout, type of thing. But it's like you look at their team, the banged up players, Derek Brown and Brian Burns are kind of the stalwarts of that D line. I just think that even if they're playing, if they're banged up, you can still have a day as the Miami Dolphins. And I just don't, and I think it's, inevitable that this team is 5-1. I think that they can run away with this game, to be honest with you. Probably not as much as they did against the Broncos, but I am thinking that the Dolphins win this game by, I'm going to say 21 points. I'm not going to lie, because the other flip side is that the Panthers offense doesn't look terrible with the lack of talent that they have, but they don't have that much talent. So yeah, the Panthers are probably going to get smoked this game, and it's inevitable that they go 0-6. Moving on, we have Patriots Raiders. An interesting game here, I say, because the Patriots are not starting. They are not starting Mac Jones. I guess, okay, they still list him as QB1 here. I've heard that they're starting Bailey Zappi, or possibly, or maybe I heard that wrong. Maybe that's just a rumor, but apparently they're kind of just over Mac Jones. These last two games that they've had where they've scored 3 points across 2 games is it's insane. It's insane to me that, it's that bad, and then you look at, this team that is insane. It's probably not even all on Mac Jones' fault. Obviously, he's the quarterback, and he's got to hold himself accountable, to the weapons he has. But Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne has looked really good. I do like his promise at this point. But then you look at all these other weapons. You have Juju out, Demario Douglas out, Tyquan Thornton that looked, honestly, he looked better than where he was drafted. But, a very banged up offense where it's like you only have a few guys to really produce. Hunter Henry being a serviceable tight end, but not one you're going to be able to rely on all too much. But look at all these injuries to their O-line as well. Cole Strange, a good young left guard out. Riley Reef out. Trent Brown questionable. Mike, this is definitely an O-line that's also banged up. And if you have a guy like Mac Jones who's not a runner, then I mean, he's gonna either have to pass it or he's gonna have to, take a sack more than likely. And looking at the team that they're obviously playing against, I wouldn't say the Raiders have the best pass rush. I would say that Max Crosby makes the Raiders pass rush good. He's a one-man wrecking crew. Just came off, a very dominant performance on Monday Night Football against my Packers, where he made, plenty of splash plays, making it hard for Jordan Love to play. And Jordan Love is he's more mobile than Mac Jones. So, I mean, if it is Mac Jones, even if it's Bailey Zappi, who's, I think a little bit more mobile than Mac, but it's not, not by much. I think the Raiders run away with this game and improve to 3-3 in a division where they definitely need to be above 500. Even given that, obviously the side note of Denver not being, a good team. You've got the Chargers and then you've got the Chiefs who you've got to compete with. And the Raiders, after last week, maybe they have found somewhat of a formula for them to win games. Not the most beautiful game. They really didn't get Davante Adams, involved too much. But the Raiders, I think that they kind of found somebody that they can rely on besides Adams and Jacoby Myers. Obviously, he is their, wide receiver 2 here. And then you have Hunter Renfrow, who I think, even though he didn't get much action, I think that, he's someone that you can rely on as another good possession receiver. I mean, obviously Davante Adams, people can call him a possession receiver to catch the ball almost every time type of thing, but I think that he does everything well to a certain extent, and to at an all-pro level. But looking at this team, I think that the thing that, gave them woes prior to last week is that Garoppolo was throwing a lot of picks. Now, I'm not going to say that he had, he had a lot of pressure, against the Packers, but he needs to be a quarterback that doesn't throw that many picks, because he's not going to be the reason you win a game, but he can be the reason you lose a game type of quarterback, where it's like you need to be able to be a game manager, type of thing. And I think that, if they can get Michael Mayer, more action, and then even throw in Austin Hooper, who I'm surprised, is, that we're talking about a time where Austin Hooper's, the second tight end on a roster. I think that there's plenty of talent on this Raiders team, and I think that there isn't any reason why they shouldn't be able to score almost at will. I know that Jacobs has had a rough go with the blocking from the O-line that he's had, even though the only injuries they have to this are Wagner and Heron. I think that, you can have a very balanced and lethal attack with the Raiders if your O-line isn't essentially just blowing it every game. And, last week was a good step. They didn't run the ball insanely well, I don't think, but they did what they needed to do in order to win the game. And I think that, the Patriots, they've been giving up a good amount of points on defense. The defense is really, really struggling. They obviously traded back for J.C. Jackson, but I still don't see that really helping. So I am definitely going with the Raiders in this game, and I'm going to go with the Raiders by 10 points. Because I think that the Patriots, their woes on offense aren't going to keep on going. Possibly, but, maybe not. So Raiders over the Patriots at home by 10. Moving on, we have our first, probably the game of the week. Lions visiting the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers coming off of a bye. Obviously, they are at home, and looking at the Lions have looked like a good team, and being 4-1, they can't really feel, any better, to be honest with you, I think, in terms of their record, but the thing that I'll say is that I think that the secondary of the Lions is a liability. I think that Mike Evans can have a great game, this game. And I think that, looking, let's scroll down a little bit here. Looking at here, you do have the return of Amon-Ra St. Brown from his injury. Let's see if he's on like a snap count or anything like that. But I think that this is a Lions team that is obviously, they're kind of banged up. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs being injured is kind of huge. They're young running back, but they still have David Montgomery, who is seemingly at full health, now without any injury. I think that this is a Lions team that obviously, they've got some good weapons. And then I guess, Jameson Williams coming back, we'll see how much he starts to get incorporated into this team. Because obviously he was suspended, at the beginning of this year, and I haven't really seen, I guess, that much from him. Sam Laporta being questionable is kind of unfortunate. The injury to him is a calf injury, which isn't, the worst thing probably to have injured, but it's still going to affect his ability to, run and stretch the field. And, we'll see if he's easier to cover because of that. The Buccaneers also just have very good linebackers on their team. They have, I'm trying to remember his name, excuse me. They have obviously Levante David and Devin White. Probably the best, two middle linebacker tandem in the league, if I were to say off the top of my head. Obviously, you also have Vita Vea, Logan Hall, can see here on their, D-line. Their front seven is, very, very good. I think that, Tryon Shoyinka is obviously a younger player. But, you look at this team, and I mean, you even look at the way that Antoine Winfield has been playing lately, and he has been coming to play. I think that they can do a good job of rattling the Lions, because the Lions do like playing kind of the short game. But the thing with the Buccaneers defense is that this is a fast flying defense that, gets to the ball really quickly. They have, a lot of hard hitters. Shaquille Barrett having an illness, I'm sure he's a go. But outside linebacker Anthony Nelson being out because of a concussion, he's doubtful. But otherwise, this is a healthy Buccaneers team where it's like you've got Godwin, you've got Mike Evans, Baker's been playing really well. I think that Baker's mobility can essentially help. It can definitely help this team in order to, keep the pressure away from him. But I do think that they're going to need to have some sort of a running game. I do think that, I think that Mike Evans is going to have a day against this Detroit Lions defense because, like I said before, they don't really have that good of a secondary. There's players that I like, Tracy Walker, Benyon, Kirby Joseph, but they just haven't ultimately been able to prove that they can really stop the pass. Unless, of course, you've got like Aiden Hutchinson, attacking the quarterback and disrupting them. Alan McNeil's been, forcing some pressure. But overall, I think that this is going to be kind of a game where the Lions are going to be challenged. They're going to be challenged to show that they can actually stop the pass on like third down. and not fall victim to, these long drives that the Buccaneers can have because they have so many good guys. And I think that Godwin could have a sneaky good game, here. But looking at this, I also think, you have a pretty good O-line. You have a pretty good O-line with Tampa Bay. That is probably, maybe not as good as the Lions, but you do have, a physical team of the Buccaneers that they play the run very well. Vita Vea is arguably one of the best D tackles, even at his age now, where he's just tough to run up the gut. And Montgomery, while he's got some pretty good speed, he is mainly like an up the gut runner, in my opinion, a one cut kind of guy. And I think that, he can definitely have a hard and rough day with Levante David and Devin White coming after him. However, I think that because of how disruptive Aiden Hutchinson is, I do honestly think that the Lions win this game. They continue their winning ways. And I think the Buccaneers fall to 3-2, even off of a bye. But I am only going to give the Lions a 6-point advantage for this game. Moving on, we have Cardinals and Rams. The Cardinals having played very scrappy, the Rams coming off of a loss last week. I think that, ultimately the Cardinals, they're going to keep on losing because I think that they just don't have the talent. They've been playing scrappy. They've been playing with their hearts out, but they just cannot win. They've obviously won one game, but that was kind of, I wouldn't say a fluke, but it was up against, the Bengals, who were not playing very well. At least I'm pretty sure that was the game that they, I'm pretty sure that was the game that they won. So looking at the Cardinals, well, this takes a second to load. Looking at the Cardinals, I know they lost to Cincinnati. Okay, their win was against, that's right, against Dallas. I don't remember why. So the thing that I'll say about their team is that they're playing scrappy. You obviously look at this and people are like, oh, are they going to roll with Dobbs? But Dobbs hasn't really passed for too many yards in a game. He had his best game against the Niners, crazy enough, and then the other team being New York. But you kind of have, they lost to Cincinnati last year. That's right. But, looking at Los Angeles, I think that, Stafford and Puka Nacua, they've been getting it done. And you look, and the Cardinals, to me, they just don't really have, the team that's going to be competitive because of lack of talent, type of thing. And obviously, Kyler Murray, is still out with his injury. Marquise Brown is questionable at this point. Rondale Moore, who you thought they would, that they have, you thought would, have turned into something by now if that was the case. But then, they just don't really have threats, so this is a team that's going to continue to struggle. They're going to continue to have to try and find pieces that are worth keeping. And looking at who they're playing, the Rams, obviously the Rams, are kind of in the hot seat. They're obviously trailing just behind the Seahawks, and then they're also trailing behind, obviously, the 49ers. But this game, I think, will end up being that, Puka Nacua possibly has a career game. I know it seems like he's had, career games every game this week, or or I mean, every game this week, every game this year already. But yeah, I see the Rams winning because I think that, their defense is also just going to give Dobbs problems, and lack of targets is just not going to make it any easier. I'm going to go Rams by 14 in this game. Moving on to Eagles Jets. The Jets, their last win coming off of the Broncos 31-21 off, ultimately winning off of a pick 6 that they had. And the Eagles, the Eagles here coming off, a win because they're obviously undefeated. And, the Eagles, Jalen Carter being out is actually kind of huge. He had been having a really, really, really good rookie, debut where it's like he's kind of set up that he was going to have rookie of the year. Now, obviously, Jalen Carter, he probably will still win this thing. But him being out is, kind of big. I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to miss him like as, much as you would think. Quez Watkins being out kind of sucks. Oh, Darius Slay is out. That kind of sucks for them. And Justin Evans. Sidney Brown and Marlon Tuipulotu, questionable. But the Jets, questionable. Sauce Gardner with, they don't even list what, which is kind of insane to me. I don't really expect the Eagles to lose to the Jets, even though the Jets, interestingly enough, I think Zach Wilson is getting better every week. I think that even though it's in New York, I don't think that really, plays too much. I think that it might even hurt potentially them a little bit, because if fans are still upset with Wilson and they're booing him when he goes onto the field, that can definitely affect a player a lot, but yeah, this game to me, like, it definitely helps Wilson that Jalen Carter is out and Darius Slay is out. But I think that the Philadelphia, yeah, looking at the rest of the defense for the Eagles, I think that, you have to consider that they still have Josh Sweat, they still have Fletcher Cox. Jordan Davis is, still a pretty good D tackle. It's nuts to say that. And then and then you still have Hassan Reddick, who's a good, James Bradbury, who's really good. And you're going up against a cornerback that, and Reed Blankenship to me has really kind of started stepping up, type of thing. And Bradley Roby isn't one of those guys either that is going to, he's a quick player and an opportunistic player, I think, but looking at this and then looking at, the Jets, I still think, they have a pretty good offensive scheme. I think that they do need to stop doing things with Dalvin Cook. I do think he's cooked, no pun intended, but he looks just not like he either doesn't fit in the system. Or it's just like, or he has lost it, which is maybe why the Vikings actually decided to trade him while they could get something for him. But, looking at this team, you still have Garrett Wilson, and then you have, Alan Lazard, great run blocking, Randall Cobb as your slot. Tyler Conklin, I think, is a pretty underrated tight end. I think he does a great job, and he, does really well. But, yeah, looking at this team, I think that, you've got to be able to lean on Breece Hall, try and get him going in order to make it so that you're not putting as much pressure on Zach Wilson. But I just don't see the Jets winning. I think that their defense is really good. I think that they can give Hurts problems, don't get me wrong. But I don't think that I just don't think that they have, what it takes to really stop Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, to be honest with you. It's just, and then DeAndre Swift, who is playing incredible, trying to make a name for himself, make it look like the Lions really should regret getting rid of him, to be honest with you, but maybe he just didn't mesh well with them. But yeah, you've got AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. The thing that I'll say that is kind of suspect about their team is that those are their two wide receivers since Quez Watkins is out. Because I think Quez Watkins, definitely would get a fair amount of targets with all the attention to Brown and Smith. But, I think that, Jalen Hurts is going to also give a lot of problems to, the defense, where, yeah, they have a pretty good pass rush, but I don't think they really have that guy who's going to really chase down Jalen Hurts, to be honest with you. Like, maybe Jermaine Johnson, John Franklin Myers is kind of a bigger guy. I really don't think, and Sauce Gardner being kind of injured, I really don't think that this is going to be huge. I think that Michael Carter is definitely a more than serviceable backup, to be honest with you. Quincy Williams, but yeah, this is overall a defensive unit that is more bend than not break. I think that they have, they give up some yards, but I think that, they also just, they do kind of stack up well against, the brotherly push as it is, with the Eagles. But with that, I think that the Jets fall to 2-4, Eagles 6-0. And I think the Eagles win. I'm gonna say by 9 points, Eagles, because I think the Jets, will make it harder on them to score because of their stout defense, and their offense is just. I don't think it's going to be able to keep up with the Eagles, even with the injuries that they have. But moving on, we have Giants Bills. The big thing about this game is Daniel Jones is not playing. He's got a neck injury, probably from getting banged up so much this year because of just the horrendous play of his own line. Azeez Ojulari being out is not good either. And then Andrew Thomas is still out. So their whole line, they don't have their best blocker, even though he didn't look good early in the year. And then you have Saquon questionable, but who knows, how much he's going to, how well he's going to play with an ankle injury that's hard to run on. And looking at the rest of these, Evan Neal even has an injury. And it's like, maybe that's why he's been playing bad. Maybe he had some preseason injury, but who knows? And then even Darren Waller has a groin injury, which is not easy to play through, But overall, the Giants look extremely banged up. The Bills, I know last week, they ended up losing, they ended up losing last week in London against Jacksonville. That's what I thought. And, they couldn't run it. Allen with 360 passing yards and Diggs having a good day. High rush was Allen with 14. I think they had like 32 rush yards. Type of thing. But, them playing New York, I think that, New York is going to ultimately kind of roll over for them, because without Daniel Jones, guess who they have at quarterback? They have Tyrod Taylor, But granted, I mean, he does run. He does know the Bills to an extent because he was on their team for a little while. Saquon being questionable, I still don't like it. I really think that Matt Breida should get the start, to be honest with you. Looking at their wide receiver core, Darius Slayton I thought would be doing better, but maybe teams have figured him out from last year, from his season. You have Wan'Dale Robinson and Isaiah Hodgins. Jalen Hyatt, obviously their burner rookie, but he's not starting. And all of these injuries just make it so that it's like, I think that, you're going up against a Bills defense where what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? They're gonna be they're going to be coming after you with Von Miller. They're going to have Ed Oliver coming after you, Greg Rousseau. It just looks insane to me that this team, I mean, even with the banged up injuries where they don't have Milano, they don't have Tre'Davious White, I really don't care. I think that their front four is going to manhandle and have a day against the Giants. The Giants, they don't give me any reason for any sort of hope. The defense, on the other hand, does kind of give me some hope, where it's like, maybe their run game will be kind of, not as good as you would want, because of Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, but yeah, Azeez Ojulari being out, not good. But overall, a very healthy defense. They only have a few other guys that are out, but it's hard for a team that of the Giants that are trying to battle through this much injuries against a team that the Bills are, I wouldn't say a bona fide lock for the playoffs just because of the way the AFC is, but a team that it's like people would favorite for to be Super Bowl favorites, especially if they can channel how they played against the Dolphins, weeks ago, where they had a commanding win, But yeah, with this game, this is obviously the Sunday night game. I think that the Giants are going to get smoked. I think it's going to be another one of these crazy things that the NFL needs to start looking at the Giants and taking them off of primetime games, and oh goodness, yeah, New York. I get it, big market, but it is absolutely appalling to just see a steamroll, of a game like this. So, yeah, I'm gonna say, Bills by 21, to be honest with you, because I think that also Stephon Diggs is just gonna light up the Giants. Even though I do think the Giants have, a pretty good secondary, I think that. Gosh, I mean, I don't know, actually know now. Without Azeez Ojulari, it's like you have Adoree Jackson and Trey Hawkins. Goodness, maybe not, no, Diggs is going to light up, he's going to light up the Giants, and it's not going to be pretty. But moving on, we have Monday, our final game of the week. We have Cowboys going up against the Chargers at SoFi Stadium in California. This game, to me, it's kind of nuts. I would say, I'm actually going to say it. I do think the Cowboys win this game. I hate to say that because I don't like the Cowboys, but I think that they win this game due to the fact that what does the Chargers defense do? They're just a defense that is really, I don't know, they're really prone defense. Like, it's ridiculous, And I mean, while Herbert, is a great quarterback, and they still have, they have Keenan Allen, who's still healthy, Mike Williams, who's on IR, Joshua Palmer's been doing well, and Quinn Johnston. Even though I don't really think it matters too much who Herbert's throwing to because he's so accurate with the ball, I think that, looking at this team, you wonder how well the O-line is going to hold up. I think that they have a pretty good O-line. but they obviously don't have Corey Linsley. He's out with an injury, and then you look at the defense, and you have Joey Bosa and you have Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack seemingly looks like he's kind of trying to reinvigorate his career at his age, which he needs to do. Otherwise, he's just going to be off a team if he can't even be at least, a serviceable, pass rusher. It's going down. The matchup though, for me, the cornerbacks that they have, I don't know how well they really match up. There's been some criticisms towards CeeDee Lamb, this last week. Some people are saying that he's not a bona fide number one. There are games to me where it's like he's non-existent or whatever, or it takes him a while for them to get him involved, but looking at the Cowboys, I think that they really need to lean on Tony Pollard, to be honest with you. Maybe use him more as a gadget. They do use him sort of as a gadget, but have him be the focal point of your offense, because I think he is a very gifted player, that is a game changer type of thing. And, looking at I've been kind of trying to refrain from looking at, I guess, the what they have, what their stats are, because I think that these can be kind of biased, type of thing. The Chargers, obviously, on defense, it's interesting, their defense is number 12. And I think that the Cowboys, largely their defense is number 6 because of their pass rush and essentially the free games that they've gotten this year. But you look at, the passing attack for the Cowboys, you wouldn't think that it should be 18th in the league, but yeah, their rushing game has still been pretty good. Overall, I think that this is, crazy that they're a middle of the pack team with the talent that they have. Looking at this, I mean, like I said, CeeDee Lamb has gotten some criticism. I think he's a pretty good wide receiver. Michael Gallup, is good. Brandon Cooks, I mean, he's the kind of guy that it's like you lose him and he's off for 20 yards. Obviously their tight end room, Jake Ferguson is kind of an unknown. I think he's, at least serviceable at this point, but I think you really need to lean on Tony Pollard in this dominant O-line that you have on the Cowboys, and try to not rely on Dak Prescott as much. I don't mean to sound too degrading towards him, but I just don't think he's a great quarterback. I think that the more years he has under his belt, the worse he gets, in the league. Because it's like you look at his best year was like his rookie year or whatever it was, where he beat out, Tony Romo for the job. And that was, ages ago now. But it's like the dude, throws games away. Literally. To me, he can't be trusted. And the fact that Jerry Jones said that, Dak Prescott is a QB we can win the Super Bowl with, is completely outlandish to me. It is completely outlandish to me, where it's like, why in the world would you continue to say this when he threw your season away last year? He threw it away in their playoff game. I can't even remember who they were playing because it didn't matter. If you're throwing picks that late in the game and your kicker who missed hella the week before, was keeping you in the game, like, goodness, I don't know what else to say, and especially with all the talent he's always had around him. You can't tell me that it's like if you don't put like an elite level quarterback on this team that he doesn't start potentially setting records, It's like, take this wide receiver core and plug it on the Chiefs. I guarantee you nobody's going to want to play that team. But yeah, Dak Prescott is overrated. I think that he's one of those X factors in the game that it's like he can be the reason you lose really, really bad losses, type of thing. And while the Chargers, I wouldn't, I think that they have good talent on the defense. I just don't think that they put it together, but you do have arguably the best safety in football in Derwin James, in my opinion. A high flyer, hard hitting, hard nosed player. But, I think that this is a game where Herbert's going to have to, be getting rid of the ball quickly because of obviously Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, but this is a secondary that is somewhat banged up. You obviously don't have Trevin Diggs, who they lost weeks ago. You still have Stephon Gilmore, who looks like he still plays really well. I like Jaron Curse, don't get me wrong, and Malik Hooker are pretty serviceable, but Deron Bland, I guess, has been playing, pretty well, but we'll see how much that continues. Obviously, the thing about him is he's a rookie. Until he has like a full season where he's like, oh, he's that guy, I don't want to write him off as like a certified, guy that you're going to be able to depend on for years to come. But even with that, I am, like I said, I'm giving the game to Dallas. I think the Chargers can, give them a run for their money. There's going to be certain things that are going to need to fall in place, such as the protection for Herbert and whether or not you can put pressure on Dak and make him throw bad throws, which definitely can happen. But they did just essentially get stomped, and they seemed angry about it afterwards. So, I mean, who knows? They might come out blazing this week. Where they absolutely smash the Chargers, potentially, in my opinion. But the Chargers are coming off of bye, so they've had time to prepare for this, and, get healthy and be full strength. So I'm going to say the Cowboys by 14, which is, a little bit of optimism towards them. But I think that, looking at this, I just don't think that the Cowboys are going to have potentially 2 humiliating losses in a row, because Dak, like I said, he's one of those quarterbacks that's like, he has good stats, don't get me wrong, but he just makes the dumbest decisions. So I think that it's like, it could be a game for him where he does well enough and they win soundly against, a Chargers team and get back on track. But who knows? Like, I don't know. I think it's crazy how much headlines Dak gets, to be honest, just because he's a Cowboys QB. But I guess, I didn't really look at the injury report for this game. I guess there isn't. Wait. Oh, they haven't come out with anything yet, but like I said, we saw kind of who's injured on the depth chart here. We obviously know that, we know here, like, the few of the key players that are out. Leighton Vander Esch being out also is bad, but I still think that, like, the strength of this defense is their, Micah Parsons and then DeMarcus Lawrence, of course. But, and then looking at this, it's like we obviously have Mike Williams is on IR, so he's not playing. Lindsley clearly out, probably not playing. But yeah, I think that, you have a game where, it says that it's going to be a pretty close game, I guess. But yeah, I think that, the Cowboys take this game. And obviously, last year they met, this looks like a preseason game because it was August 20th, obviously, but even the backups of the Cowboys beat the Chargers, but not saying much. I think that Dallas wins this game, even though it is in SoFi in California. So yeah, Cowboys by 14. That's my final thing. Oh, excuse me. Now, if that is all, I would like to say that if you guys have any questions or opinions on this, then you have any questions or opinions on this, then please state them. I'm always open to discussion, what they think, or if you have any questions for me. Otherwise, I think that is going to do it for this edition of Cast. I appreciate you for watching. And yeah, it looks like I will see you next time.